And we are back. So we've taken a look at how we can make this tiling, at least a basic first pass. So how about bringing in the other elements of this material? So currently you can see we just have a uniform specular sheen as if it was perfectly smooth. In order to get that response into a game engine, we want to look at creating a normal map. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So far, out of the bake, we've only expected one of the output pins, which is the texture color, but we also have this distance pin that's just below it. The distance measures the distance from the ray starting point on the bake target to the surface of the high poly geometry. So it's a direct measure of displacement. If we want to visualize this displacement, we can just take it out of this node here and plug it into a null. And if you see that it's completely black, don't worry. That's probably just because we have very low values. So if we want to get a sense of what's actually contained within, we can put down a quick little equalize node, which will just basically normalize this here for our preview purposes. Okay, so we can see that there is information inside. And if we want to turn this into a normal map, we can quite simply put down a height to normal node. If we plug this height to normal into the null, then we're going to start to see the normals that we think we're getting from this baking. We can plug the normal into the preview material, and we're going to see the results that we're getting, and that we're starting to get some kind of lighting information or response as we turn the camera. Now, the high contrast adjustment that we've made is hindering rather than helping, so I'm going to turn that off and see what we're dealing with. And it's not too bad, but I get the feeling that maybe some things here are a bit inverted. So just to try and help me see this a little bit more clearly, I'm going to jump outside of this network, and then I'm going to go and hit pin at the top of the viewport, this little button, to pin my view to this cop network. Now I'm going to put down a skylight, and we can actually see what this looks like with proper lighting and shading. And we're seeing that we're getting some of these sort of seams are still occurring, so they're more noticeable inside of the normals or heights, which is to be expected. And then apart from that, we can see that we are getting potentially some of the information coming through, but it feels like these striations are currently kind of raised rather than lowered. And I think I know they're meant to be cracks. So I'm going to jump back inside of the COPS network without unpinning my view, and I can make an assumption that the height measurement we've currently got is flipped. So I'm going to go ahead and put down an invert, and we're going to see what we get as a result of that. And is that looking better? I think it potentially is. It is a little bit hard to judge, however, so I'm also going to actually plug the result of that height inversion directly into the height pin on the preview material. And we're going to see something that doesn't really help us to begin with. It seems that the displacement settings by default inside of Copernicus materials are very sensitive to scale. So we need to go and modify the scale of this kind of preview plane that we've created by going back to the SOP import and jumping inside of it. Inside of here, I'm going to go to the UV transform and reduce the tiling for now, so that we have just, again, a grid of 2x2 grid, or maybe even we'll just go for a single instance of the scan. And we just now can use this to inspect the result we're getting. So it actually looks to me like now these areas are being raised, which should be lowered. So potentially I was mistaken when I said that we wanted to invert these results. But I can't seem to find a setting here that's giving me the look I'm after. So I'm going to try and plug the output of the equalize into the displacement instead. And there we go. That's, I think, starting to help me get a slightly better picture of what I'm working with. Now, if I go and put down a remap after the equalize, I can start to sort of control the overall levels of displacement a little bit better. And we can start to see the surface and the cracks appearing and looking a little bit closer to how they did in the source. This is largely sort of a creative visual task rather than anything that's scientifically accurate in this case. More an art than a science, that's what I was trying to say. Okay. So I think this is looking okay. And I also want to see it with a little bit of ambient occlusion in the mix. So just like we did the height to normal, I can put down a height to ambient occlusion node. And Ooh, maybe I'll try and plug this output of this remap into this normal first so that we're dealing with that. And I think these normals are a bit too crazy. So we're going to bring down the height scale of the normals because we're dealing not with a rocky surface, but a sort of a sandy one, right? So I think this is giving us some kind of funny looking results right now. And it might be that the specular here is kind of really what's throwing us off too. So we should address that. So in order to create a quick little first pass at the specularity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the color actually, and we're going to go ahead and put down a mono node. So we don't have any lighting information about the actual specularity of the surface. So the best we can do is hope to derive it somehow from the information contained within the other maps. In this mono node, currently is picking luminance, but I'm going to go and have a look at the hue, saturation, and value channels to see if one of those stands out as being good for potential roughness modification. Value seems to be pretty good in terms of like giving us an estimate of the depth of the areas. We do also see little stones are getting picked out, which I would expect to have a lower roughness than the surrounding dirt. So I'm going to go and have a look at a few more of these, maybe have a look at the different color channels individually, so red, green, and blue. And I'm trying to identify the one that's going to give me the best separation of elements. And potentially the one that's going to work best in this case is actually going to be the saturation, because I can see that's pulling out some of these smaller stones quite nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the preview material. So we're going to take that and plug it into the roughness, which is near the top. And then we need to go ahead and remap it so that it's within the right kind of range. And I think I want to have a higher overall roughness. So the minimum roughness value needs to be closer to 1. And I feel like now this is starting to take on the character of the surface that we're looking for. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be for a first pass, because we really want to just take these into Unreal as soon as possible to inspect them directly in Engine. So for now, I think we're going to say that we're happy with this, call it done, and we'll take it into Unreal and then assess further and go from there.